All
Oh my
right, so
gosh.
the next game that I want to be able to talk about has been anticipated game by me since it launched their Kickstarter about a year ago by Capstone Games. Pipeline. Pipeline by Ryan Courtney. I think his first ever design, and what a design it is. Not designed, but graphically designed and illustrated by Ian O'Toole, which can do no wrong. Ian O'Toole, so good. Anything he touches turns to gold.
So good.
But let's talk about Pipeline. So, Pipeline by Capstone Games is a game in which you are essentially privatized oil companies, and the government ran this oil system, and they're like, yo, we can't do this anymore. We're giving it up, and we're giving you the opportunity to be able to pick over all the pipes that we have to build your own privatized pipeline. And so the objective of the game is, over the course of 3 years, is to build the best pipes. Build the best pipes. You got to take oil. You're going to be buying
So many
oil.
pipes.
So many pipes. You're going to be buying oil from the crude market, different refined markets. You're going to be upgrading your company. You're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff with oil, which are little wooden cubes, or if you upgrade for $15, little like steel cubes, which are really nice. I'm glad I
Okay,
did
is
it.
that the only difference between the Kickstarter version and the retail version?
That is correct. The
Oh,
wooden cubes are totally perfect. And I just knew it was one of those things that
yeah.
if I
All
didn't
right.
get the cubes, it just was going to be sadness. But anyways, let's talk about Pipeline. There it is. Boom, Pipeline. So Pipeline, again, 2 to 4 player games. And what you're doing is very, very simple. It's essentially it's a 2-phased game in which the first phase is you do one action out of like 10, right? And you could even consolidate some actions into like a single action, like with the refined markets and things. You can do that if you want. And then you have a second action, which is a machine phase, which we'll talk about here in a second. But in this game, what you're going to be doing is, like I said, going to the crude market. You can buy 3 different types of oil at the crude market. You can buy blue oil, gray oil, or orange oil. There isn't any sort of name for them. It's just specifically a color. And when you buy them specifically with crude, that is the lowest grade of oil that you can purchase basically at the start of the game. And as time goes on, what you can do is you can start refining your oil. And how you refine your oil is you have to build out your pipeline. So in the middle of the board, which I'll put up here onto the screen, let's get a different one here. There we go. So in the middle of the board, there are quadrants. And in these quadrants are rectangle pipelines that have the 3 same colors as the type of oil that you can purchase. And what you're doing is that you can place your meeple onto one of these government tiles and pick up and pay for those tiles to bring over to your own company and start this little spatial puzzle of being able to connect pipes together. So you want to be able to build and connect orange pipelines to orange pipelines, blue to blue, and silver to silver, et cetera, et cetera. And what you end up are trying to do is being the most efficient as possible, so that you can kind of intertwine everything together in each joint that you'll see in a pipe, which I'll actually bring up here in another screenshot, counts as like one section or one kind of value towards that pipeline. And so you'll build out this sector here, and then there are other specific actions that we'll talk about, such as you can go to the machine and pipes area of the board where you can buy machines which go into your own pipeline. You can buy more tanks, and you can put those tanks into your kind of player board, and that's where you put in all of your oil. And then you can also place your specific meeple onto your built out pipeline. And so what happens is when you do that, you look at the tile and you see how many colors are on that tile. And what you do then is you start running your pipeline of that color, and you count however many joints are connected for that color. And what you'll do is you end up counting like 4 or 5 or 6. And at the top left part of the board, there's going to be like a random series of numbers that correspond to how much your value of pipeline can upgrade from crude to low grade to mid grade, and mid grade to high grade. And so when you run your pipeline, you can then say, oh, okay, if it takes a value of 4 pipeline to refine crude to low, I can place my dude here and then bring it up, bring my orange cube from crude to low grade. And of course, as you start refining your oil, the more lucrative the oil becomes. So you can sell that back into the market, into the refined market. Or what you can do is you can take what are called contracts or orders. So when you take a contract will sit on the right-hand side of your player board. And as you start getting the specific oil you need in order to fulfill contracts, you immediately get money per that contract. And as soon as you place it, you get that money. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about it is that at the end of a year cycle, you check to see how many of those contracts you fulfilled. If you fulfilled those contracts, you take out all the cubes, you put them back into the bins, and you keep that contract. Okay, so like coming into the next year, you can continue to get like this source of income as you move through. And
That's
then
cool.
you have orders. Orders work the same, except for you have to do them all at the same time. But when you do orders at the same time, you get a big bulk sum of cash that you can just throw your oil at, and they just give you like hundreds of dollars. But it's not something that you can get year over year. It's just something that you do, and then it's fulfilled, and then you get a big sum of cash, and that's it. Okay. So this game, like I said, continues. You have I think 8 turns in year 1, 6 turns in year 2, and 4 turns in year 3. And as soon as the end of year 3 hits, you then go through a series of counting up all your points. There are these valuation cards that have specific goals stating count the amount of values your highest pipeline is and get money for that. You can get $10 per tank. There's a lot of different valuations that kind of steer you in a direction of strategy about how you want to start accumulating endgame cash. And after everything is said and done, the person with the most amount of money wins. And I must say that, again, all this game in terms of theme does not, let's just say, tickle my fancy.
No fancies tickled with that game.
No.
Theme-wise.
However, playing this game reminded me so much of playing a Vital Lacerda game. It is uncanny.
Really?
Uncanny how similar it feels. In that when you do an action, there's a wide variety of actions that you do, but the action you take is so straightforward and simple. So it's let not the complexity of the action bog you down, but let the complexity of the amount of choice that is in front of you be where you make your decisions. And then you just take that straightforward action. And it's one of those games where you can end up planning out in advance, like chess, what you need to be able to do in order to further your oil company to make the most amount of money. And and so when I saw this game on Kickstarter, I was like, Tool, Ryan Courtney, who is this guy? I haven't, heard anything about him, but I backed it. I have no idea why. And the reason I tell people the why it did is because I got this weird power grid, vibe or energy from it. All right. It's really bizarre and really strange, but I did. And I waited and didn't hear much news. And then all of a sudden it came out and the hype train for it picked up and I played it. And it was the first game I played was 2-player, and there wasn't any real tension. But then you start kind of digging more into the rules, and you start figuring out oh, we missed this little tiny thing. Oh, we missed this little tiny thing. And then you play it again, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is now all totally changed. And then all of a sudden, I think I've played this game now. I think it's been twice. First was a 2-player game, and then the second time was a 3-player game. There's a puppy! Hi, Devils! I talk about pipeline. Thank you. What's mamos? When I played it, a 3rd-player game, I was like, man, this is great. This is really fun, and I enjoyed it a lot. And I strongly recommend those that have been on the fence about pipeline to truly try it, at least, right? And the quality that you're getting in terms of just the regular thing is outstanding. It's excellent.
Okay, so this is a game that I have been on the fence about. That I was back on the Kickstarter and
Oh,
everything,
you gotta
and
go
I
back to
play
live.
it. Oh wait, what?
No, I just had to switch the. I had to switch the overlay.
Oh, got it. Hold on, I'll mark that. So this is a game that I was definitely on the fence about. Back at the Kickstarter and everything. I did not back it in the end. Now, this is a game that I would probably primarily play two players with my wife and myself.
Hmm.
But you're saying that the tension does come after you play it a few times and you understand the game a bit more. Is it the same tension as a two-player game that as a three or more player game, or is it just a different feel of a game?
Yeah, so 3 players, you start to see. So it's really hard because, again, not going back to the 2 player game, knowing what I know now about contracts and orders, because those were probably the hardest thing, I think, in terms of my learn, how
Hmm.
those actually kind of like fit into turn to turn play and how to be able
Okay.
to efficiently use that. But because I imagine what ends up happening is that there isn't any real, like, not like a necessarily a struggle, but there isn't necessarily any sort of tension of having a certain type of oil color being lost, and that you have to kind of like skew over and be like, okay, I have to actually transfer over to, you know, uh, like steel instead of blue or orange, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so, like I said, that 2 player game wasn't like 100% like dead on, right? It was definitely much like I have a great like 80% of like, okay, this is what everything does, and we're gonna kind of like trip through it and see what ends up happening. And we ended up getting into the flow of things, but you just didn't quite feel it. Um, but that didn't necessarily stop me from being like, okay, I don't want to continue to play this game. I want to be able to play it with more. And now knowing what I know now, I think coming back with 2 players might make it more interesting
Hmm.
when you go back and forth between things. But I do strongly recommend that if you can get a group of 3 or 4 to play it, you start to see these cubes that are in the crude market starting to go down and realizing that you're going to have to diversify.
Interesting.
So there's the crude market up at the top of the board that has like all these different values for oil cubes. But then if you go into the refined market, there's also the same crude oil you can buy, but the prices are a little bit lower or higher depending on what specific color you're at. And so what ends up happening is that the crude market can usually give you good initial buy on certain colors, but if you go to a refined market, you might actually be able to find a better deal there. So, yeah,
Interesting. Okay.
to me it was like when you start to see what's all happening at the end of the day, it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
And of course
Yeah.
the overall production, the simplicity of it all. Like there's something with Ian O'Toole's design that I really like in terms of it made me actually recall this like strange vista I had when we were traveling down a highway and we have this huge refinery that looked beautiful in its weird kind of like destructive way. Like, does that make any sense?
It
Like,
does. It totally does.
it's just like because there's so many bright lights and things. So when you drive down it at dusk, you kind of have this whole sense. And like Ian's design invoked that. And it was more or less kind of more of like a positive memory because I thought it looked so cool. And so that is kind of invoked throughout the entire game, and through its design and componentry and such. And so, Pipeline, I think it's like 75, $80. You
Yeah.
don't need the cubes, honestly.
Right.
It looks great without it. And
Hmm.
I do strongly recommend
Yeah,
you play this.
that's interesting. Tim in the chat's saying that because of the theme, it was just kind of meh for him. Just, I mean, not having played it, and that's something that I think kind of turned me off as well. However, at the same time, I think there is beauty and power in creating a very intriguing game with a theme like this, and it did give me that. It did invoke that feeling of like pipe dreams of the old PC game from the '90s, and just that idea seems very fascinating to me. And I think that's where a lot of power can come in from a game where taking this theme that's not the exciting game like Time of Legends, Mystic Pizza. Wait, I forgot which one we did. Anyway, but
Something.
still,
Funny
but still,
girl.
the funny girl. Thank you. But still having this very interesting, complex game behind that. Okay, I'm definitely gonna check this one out. I think this is for me a try before I buy. Which
Absolutely.
which definitely never is the case for me, by the way. It is always buy before I try. That's
Absolutely,
just
again times two.
yeah. So like I have this great concept of like, yeah, I'm gonna try that before I buy it. But where am I gonna try a game before actually buying it? I don't.
Derek.
Derek, can you buy this game for us, please?
But anyways, yeah,
Uh,
again, I'll just kind of summarize again. Pipeline, strongly recommend you guys give this a shot, give it a look. I would actually say this: if you're a fan of Vital Lacerda's design, I think this will be very much up your alley. So, like, full-heartedly, Lacerda fan, give this one a shot at least, or just straight up buy before you try.
I feel like we shouldn't recommend that about anything.
Too late. It's already happened.
Too late.
Pipeline
that's
by
really good.
Capstone Games.